Welcome back to another episode of Fighting Fire with Fire. And in case you haven't listened to the previous episode, the meaning behind fighting fire with fire means we need to fight the fire of desire, of lust, with the fire of willpower. So these talks of fighting fire with fire, they have a flavor of the esoteric work within them, because it directly addresses the inner work that we each have to go through in relation to our egos and our desire, and how we need to develop our willpower in order to be triumphant. So therefore, my friends, this episode we are going to touch on the topic of willpower. It is known in Gnosis that the motto of the Gnostics is Thelma, which means willpower. For without willpower we have nothing. And we do need to develop the free essence that we have, because that free essence, which on average is 3% of consciousness, needs the strength and the discipline to withstand the hypnosis of the 97% of subconscious that we have. So that 3% can be trained. I have mentioned this before in previous videos. The 3% of free essence that we have, although it is free, it does not mean that it is active, that it is put into activity. No. In most cases, it is hypnotized by the subconscious. Therefore, we need to develop the willpower within the 3% of consciousness. We need to infuse our 3% of essence with willpower in order to activate it. But today, I would like to go in the direction of willpower that is needed in order to overcome everyday challenges, ordeals, tests, and sufferings of the inner path. Because in the past few months, I have received several messages on my Telegram account, not by one, but by many students who they all seem to message me in relation to the same theme. And that theme is that they all suffer with their daily life. They suffer due to their family, due to their friends. They suffer challenges and ordeals with their girlfriend, with their boyfriend, their partners. They complain about how difficult it is to deal with family members, how it's difficult to deal with their girlfriend because their girlfriend does not accept the sexual teachings of alchemy. They complain about their friends who are not in the spiritual teachings and who are asleep, and how they do not know how to be around their friends anymore. They complain about their workplace, about their boss, that it is so difficult, that their boss keeps putting pressure on them. They complain about how they are single. They do not have a spouse, a partner, to practice the alchemy. They also complain about society and how things are getting more difficult, more laws, more heaviness. And what they fail to understand is everything that they have mentioned is the path of gnosis. Remember this, my friends. Once you are aware of your egos and you are working on them to the best of your ability, once you are aware of the sexual teachings of chastity, you are doing your best to walk on the path of chastity by transmuting your energy, whether you are single or whether you are in a couple, and be in service to others in the best ways you can in every situation. If you are aware of these three teachings of the revolution of the consciousness, and you specifically are working with chastity, you are knocking on the door of spiritual initiation. And what that means, brothers and sisters, is that life becomes orchestrated by your being, by the masters of the White Lodge, by our teacher, Samael Aun Woer. They test us, they orchestrate events in our life to turn up the pressure in our life. So as we boil 100 degrees Celsius, the impurities come to the surface and we see them for what they are. Impurities such as lust, such as anger, such as pride, fear, jealousy. This is what the path is about, brothers and sisters. Challenges, ordeals, and difficulties is what makes the spiritual path the spiritual path. No one has ever removed the ego while sitting in a cave all day or in the mountains all day meditating. As much as we all would love to do that, to sit in solitude and meditate all day, we will never be able to remove our egos, because peaceful times of solitude is poison for the development of the soul. Difficult times, challenges, ordeals, when we're put under pressure, these are times of spiritual growth, because it truly shows us what we are made of and how we are doing and how much willpower we have. It shows us where we become identified. It shows us the buttons that people outside of us can push and make us act in certain ways like a robot, programmed like robots. The path is for difficulties and challenges to come, so that we see these buttons in us that people can push and to make us act in a mechanical way. And once we see them, we can remove them, no longer being mechanical creatures as we were once before. Although it is difficult, we need to become stoic in the face of suffering, in the face of challenges, in the face of ordeals. We need to not be fazed by ordeals and difficulties, but instead observe ourselves and observe what comes up when these challenges in our life presents itself to us. My brothers and sisters in spirit, each day upon awakening, know that everything you will encounter in your day, at work, with your boss, with your co-workers, with your family, with your friends, with your spouse, they will all be used by the spiritual hierarchies in order to test you. So we cannot take anything personal, but instead we need to receive with gladness the unpleasant manifestations of our fellow men, in order to see what comes up and causes us to behave like mechanical creatures. We need to know how to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. We need to kiss the whip of our executioners, because in truth, our executioners, our fellow men, are in fact our teachers, teaching us what we need to remove from within. When we reflect a little on the fact that once we are performing the 3 factors of awakening the consciousness, specifically transmutation of the sexual force, we are going to be tested every day. Our life becomes tests. For it is written, initiation is life itself, intensely lived. When we wake up each morning knowing that our life becomes a test, because we want to become better and become perfect like our Father in heaven is perfect, then we must realize that every time we react mechanically, every time our buttons are pushed and we behave in an egoic state of lust, anger, pride, jealousy, fear, we are failing tests. Each time we run away and we don't want to face difficult and challenging circumstances, we are failing the very tests that the spiritual hierarchies are throwing to us. Fortunately for us, brothers and sisters, the White Lodge, the Masters, and God Most High is extremely compassionate, and they will always test us again as long as we are sincere and genuinely working on removing our egos. They will keep trying to test us even if we fail. So brothers and sisters, each day is an exam, is a test, and the test are the difficulties and challenges that we are given from above. Our life is orchestrated by our Divine Mother, by the Masters, by the White Lodge. So spend your days extremely aware, my friends, and observant of what comes up within. Die from moment to moment as much as you can. Reflect on our defects, on our flaws, brothers and sisters, and remove them. Be done with them once and for all. Do not waste time complaining, moaning, feeling self-pity or defeatism for yourself. Stand up, remove what you see internally, and let us become different creatures. Let us become solar beings, conscious beings that transforms impressions from moment to moment. Let us be finished with the mechanical states that we have spent lifetimes in. Let's finish with them all, my friends. Raise up arms against the naffs, the psychological defects, the flaws that we carry within. Remove them and let's be done with them. Show no mercy to any egos, especially the good ones that disguise themselves as spiritual, that disguises themselves as being a spiritual person, having an identity of a Gnostic, because that too needs to be removed. Remember, an awakened person with no ego has no identity that can be grasped. They are like space. Any impressions that comes to them through their senses by other people, whether offensive or not, passes through them like air, because they are empty of any self that causes tension, that causes a reaction. Let us become like space internally, brothers and sisters. But know that space in and of itself is not nothing, but in fact has billions of atoms inside a cup of empty space that has enough energy to cook and boil the oceans of the earth if the energy is liberated from the atom. I am not here today to speak about my own experiences and what I have gone through in the past. But personally, I have gone through terrible difficulties, unspeakable challenges that I could not share with anyone. But these challenges brought up a lot of egos that I had to digest myself and process myself without the help of anyone else but my inner being. And if I were to share with you these challenges and ordeals that I was given, you would think me crazy, and you would ask me why. But when you follow the will of your being, you realize that you have to do things that society would never think of doing, that what ordinary people would ever think of doing. In order to be different, you have to stop being what you already are. In order to become something different, we need to split ourselves from the hive mind of the masses. So when we follow our being, we do things that goes against the grain. And so was my choices with certain challenges and difficulties that brought a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. But here I am today, and what I have learned is that the suffering that we feel internally, the whips and chains and the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that pierces our chest, our heart, is in fact the very means to opening up our heart center and allowing the love of compassion and bodhicitta to flow out from. The bigger the wounds, the bigger the capacity for that heart to love. So brothers and sisters, this is why we need willpower. In order to receive with pleasure the sticks and stones, the slings and arrows, and the whips and chains of society, of our workplace, of our family, of our friends, and of our partners. The difficulties we have at home with our spouse is the path. I have many people who write and ask about what I've mentioned previously, how their partner does not accept the teachings of alchemy. And I was too in that situation. But the thing is, we are in this situation for a reason, my friends. That is our karma. And that is exactly where we are meant to be, right here, right now. If we were meant to be in a spiritual, elevated relationship where both partners are practicing alchemy every day for an hour, then we would be in that situation because God Most High is so powerful and omniscient that He could change circumstances in an hour in our life. Everything could be changed. But He does not. He leaves us in the miserable state that we are in, because it is exactly where we need to be for our development. He wants to see us stand up out of the mud of misery that we are in, to look at our situation in a different light, and to raise up with compassion, with love, with gentleness and tenderness for our spouse, and to do the best we can to be the perfect spouse, but also to be the perfect son or daughter of the Lord, of our being. So friends, please, the main message I want to get across to everybody today is embrace your sufferings, And I don't mean physical sufferings, I mean the emotional and mental, psychological sufferings we need to go through in the spiritual work. Embrace the challenges and difficulties of everyday life, because it is in those tests and those difficulties where we change, where we grow. There is no change or growth to be found when we have easy days, easy lives. If you look at any of the masters, have they ever led an easy life? Master Samael himself suffered greatly. He suffered greatly for humanity. His closest disciples turned against him, but it was all part of his path. Christ, did he live an easy life at all? I'm going to finish this with an experience that I had that I found difficult. 5 or 6 months ago, me and my partner, we moved into a new house, a new home. Because previously we were living in an apartment which cost the same amount of money monthly compared to if we were paying a monthly payment on a mortgage. So in the long run, it was better to pay for a mortgage than paying the same price for apartment rent, because in the end, the house will be ours. And in April, we were given the keys of our new home after many months of waiting and many months of delays. We had the keys a day, and I had one of my friends who was a carpenter who was installing floorboards in the downstairs living room, which wasn't finished. He was only there one day, and he had half the floorboards set down on the ground. And I left the apartment that we were still currently staying in, and my wife was at home with my son. I was on my way to work, and my wife rang me and told me how the site foreman rang her because the site foreman received a phone call by a passerby who walked past our new home and heard alarms going off, and also saw water in the hallway downstairs. So this was a severe test of the element of water, as you can imagine. The test began here because I felt a lot of resistance in going out to the new house to check, because I would be late for work and my boss is extremely difficult. She is my psychological trainer. Nevertheless, I rang her to tell her I was going to be late, and with much resistance, she was reluctant to listen to what I had to say, so I had to tell her that I wasn't coming in until I had my house sorted. So I drove out to the house, and my wife's parents were outside of the house already, looking in at the window. And when I got out of the car, looking at their face said it all. I knew that what I was about to see was painful. Might I add that my partner's father suffers greatly from anger. So not only did I have a disaster before me, but I also had a professional in anger standing by my side and shouting and cursing and giving out. I walked to the door. I could hear many alarms going off. I looked in the window next to the door, and I saw water running down the stairs of our new home, like a waterfall, like a fountain. I saw water flowing down through the ceiling, through the alarms, through the pendants of the lights. Water in our new kitchen, in our new hallway, covering the new tiles. I walk in the door and I look to my right into the living room, and the new floorboards are floating on top of ankle-deep water. As you can imagine, my heart sank and was crushed to 1,000 pieces. My eyes welled up with tears, and I thought, all this time of waiting and saving money to move into a new home, and now it's destroyed. Not only that, but I had my wife's father follow me around the house, cursing and telling off the building company in my ear, saying things that are unspeakable, but not helping the situation. I could feel fear about to take over me, but then I heard the word of my being say, action is required. And in that moment I knew that there was no time to cry, there was no time to be upset, there was no time to stand and argue with my partner's father. There was only in that moment time to act and to prevent any further damage. I had to go and look for the water mains in order to turn off the water flow. I managed to remain pretty calm and just focus completely on action and getting the place cleaned, dried, stopping any water leakages. When I went upstairs to see where the water was coming from, the new toilet was overflowing with water. And not just the cistern tank, but the actual bowl of the toilet was overflowing with water, and the water was sinking down through the floorboards, through the ceiling, down the stairs, and down through the lights, the pendants in the kitchen, down onto the worktop. It was the most heartbreaking sight to ever see when you were saving up so much money, so much time, so much effort, so you could move into a new home with your wife and your son. But thanks to my being, who motivated me in that moment to act, lots of damage was prevented. And in the end, the site foreman and the building company, after a lot of reluctancy and the inability to accept that it was their fault, they decided to reimburse us the money for any damage. Although not directly accepting that the fault was on their part, they still reimbursed us the money to replace any damaged items. So in a situation like that, usually one would become angry and would have an argument with your spouse's father, would cry, would bend down on your knees and tear your vestments in pain. But in that situation, I had to transform that whole event and not leave it get the better of me, but instead see the positive. While everyone around me was negative and hopeless. So friends, I will leave you with that experience. For without willpower, without that stoic willpower, I would not have been able to pass that test, that challenge, that terrible initiation that I will never forget. I hope you all benefited today from listening to this recording. And I hope you see the importance of willpower on the path. We need to become warriors. We need to become warriors of love, of gentleness. Warriors that can endure suffering, challenges, difficulties with love, compassion, understanding, with willpower. For as long as we have our being and our Divine Mother, we can overcome anything. Inferential peace, my friends.